Hello, everyone. My name's Jarrod King, and you are watching what was recently changed to LGBTr. So let me do a quick explanation of what I'm talking about there. I used to call it The Read, but I know that there is a well-known podcast out there called The Read, and I don't really want to conflict with them too much, especially since I'm taking these interviews, moving them into podcast form once I'm done here, so that I'd be able to have more, more distribution, more people listening. So I've decided to rename it LGBTr, and that's kind of a double entendre. It's like LGBT, but it stands for lots of good books to read. So I don't know, maybe it's a little corny, but I don't know, I like it, and I'm sticking with it. So, but I'm excited to introduce tonight's guest. Let's jump into it. Tonight's guest is the proud intersex, gendered, nonconforming, androgynous, pansexual author of The Man on Top of the World. This book was released in August 2016. However, writing a novel wasn't always part of their agenda. They found their love of writing during high school and gradually became the erotica author known by their initials VC. With an eclectic taste and a story like none other, I am excited to introduce Vanessa Clark. Hey, Vanessa, how's it going?
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Yeah, I'm excited to jump in, especially after taking a look at some of your work. I'm excited to, kind of get some of these questions answered. So let's start with the first one. In your bio, you mentioned that you got your start in writing during high school. At that point, you won a couple of Gold Key Awards from Scholastic Inc. for your work. So what were your first short stories about?
Well, first, for some reason back then, I guess when I was a teenager, I was focusing a lot on like stories about their relationship as siblings and what conflicts that a sibling can have with each other. So one of those stories was about that. They were in Iceland and just stuck at home, not having just trying to figure out what to do and just make up stories and things like that. And then was a Holocaust victim writing a love letter to his wife before he unfortunately passes away. My two obsessions at the time was the Holocaust and early sister relationships. It's
Okay,
kind of
so
random,
that's interesting
actually.
because yeah, I mean, because I know you kind of moved ahead into erotica, and that sounds like some kind of deep in high school. So I'll get into that in a minute. But what was it about writing that stuck with you during this time in high school?
Well, I mean, during high school, I mean, I was like one of those weirdos. I didn't really have any friends really, so basically, writing was like that escape for me to get away from all the issues of high school and loneliness and things like that. A world where everyone was accepted, everyone belonged. It was basically my way of just creating a world of wow, like acceptance is cool.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people agree with you that that's kind of the power of reading and the power of even writing and creating your own worlds. Um, I think a lot of people can relate as well. I'm not really necessarily fitting in high school and kind of having to find uh, some kind of an escape. So I know that for me it was like a lot of video games
Oh yeah.
um, and stuff like that. So I could definitely relate with that. Were there any other ways that you kind of made an escape to places where you felt that you belonged or anything like that at this time?
Well, you mentioned video games. I was really heavily into video games, Pokemon. I was really heavily into that. If it wasn't writing, it was
Yeah.
either Pokemon or video games.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. So that's definitely, and it was definitely like a big influence into what I write as well, which is like fantasy, sci-fi, and
It's
stuff. So
fancy,
all
yeah.
that stuff kind of stuck, you know. So you didn't start writing erotica until college. What caused the switch in genre or focus for you?
I mean, when I look back, I think, man, what brought me to that? I mean, I guess it's Star of Oysters and Chocolate.com. Unfortunately, they're debunked. I mean, They don't exist anymore, unfortunately. But at the time, I found them one day online, and I said, "Hey, let me try." I read some stories that were on that website, and I said, let me try this. It looks fun, and I have a lot of sexual experience to write about, so that was inspiration as well. And so I just wrote a story. I remember it was called Stella Loves Bella, and I forget what other story it was, but I submitted that story to them, and they loved it. And since then, I was kind of took off from there. I mean, I was surprised that a lot of people gravitated towards those short stories, and because of that love and acceptance with the readers, that's when I started just kept doing it. And there was no reason for me to stop, so I just kept doing it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I find that it's a very different genre. I mean, of
Mm-hmm.
course.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So, do you find people who that tend to like that genre only, or do they kind of what who are the people that read? I don't know. That may sound like an ignorant question, but what
I
is
don't
what
know.
is yeah? Maybe you could explain that.
Oh well, I'll say that most of the readers, are mostly women, and it's hard to say because I mean, I guess with the Rocka crowd, I would say that the ones that are really into Rocka, they're really heavily into Rocka. And I guess if it's not Rocka, they're into Harlequin romance novels or general. And of course, those two can combine stuff sometimes. Maybe not as graphic, but sometimes. So I think that's really where the audience comes from. It's mostly female, and it's mostly really either a romantic base or just completely sexual.
Okay, cool. So, your short stories have been published in various anthologies, and it's really hard for a lot of authors to get their work out there and published in anthologies and literary magazines. So, what has it been like to have your work published in so many places?
Well, it's been a pretty cool ride because when you say that it's hard. I mean, we're not kidding. I mean, when per all, I mean, those editors get maybe 500 stories or more. So to have my story be one of the only 12 people, 12 authors anthology, it's a pretty cool. And I mean, I don't want to say it's been like I've been lucky because whenever people say, "Oh, you're just lucky," it cheapens the hard work. It's a lot of submitting to a lot of them, and even though I guess prolific, I mean, it may seem that way, but when you look at it, I mean, I get more rejection letters than I do acceptance. So, you know, but with the number of stories I get accepted at all the rejection stuff, you kind of forget about it, and you realize, wow, I've really accomplished a lot.
Yeah,
I encourage any writer to do the same. I mean, just keep going.
cool. Would you say that you've kind of gained kind of a thick skin to rejection in that way?
Oh yes, I mean nowadays a rejection letter. I mean, you gotta let it roll off because it really, first of all, it's nothing personal because everyone has different tastes. Editors, agents, publishers, they all have different tastes, and it's nothing personal. It doesn't mean that your writing sucks or it just means that okay, it just wasn't for them or it wasn't for that anthology. And literary magazines, there's a certain style they're looking for, and if your story, then they're not gonna want it. It's just it's all personal taste. It's all subjective.
Yeah, I guess it's just kind of the name of the game.
Oh yeah.
I can remember I was trying to when I wrote my first book, I was trying to submit that to agents and stuff like that. A lot of form rejection letters,
Oh
didn't
yeah.
even get any like little personalization, didn't even get that much. So yeah, I eventually had to settle and do the self-publishing thing. But I
Mm-hmm.
do know about that, and yeah, I think a lot of people once they start, it's one of those things that kind of like you know it's one of those nerve-wracking things, but eventually you just kind of have to get used to it if that's what you want to do.
Oh yeah, and it's with every entertainment industry, whether you want to be a director, actor, whatever. Not just with publishing, but just any industry like that, you're gonna get rejection. I mean, 95% of the time you're gonna get rejection. It's just the way it is.
All right. So, judging from your blog, two things stood out to me as being very important to you, and that would be music and film. So, how have these two art forms informed your writing?
Well, I guess with when you read, obviously when you're reading, there's a movie in your head. So that's why I've always correlated movies with writing. And then with the music's like the soundtrack. I mean, I look at them as just the whole thing. Does that make sense? I mean, they're all just,
No,
it's
no,
just
of course, of
yeah, the
course.
perfect
I do the same
marriage.
thing. Yeah, I could definitely see that. What would you say your film and music taste is like though? Because it seems to be like I said at the top of the show, you have a very eclectic kind of taste. So, how would you describe that?
Eh, it depends on my mood. I mean, I would say what I don't really like. I mean, people see how I review a lot of movies. I'm not big on westerns, and I'm not big on stuff. Those are only two things I don't like. But like otherwise, I'd have to get open mind about the things I watch. I mean, I watch so many movies. I mean, that may not be for me, but I still just try this movie and maybe I'll love it. And a lot of times, like, there's a lot of movies I've watched, and man, I really like this more than I thought I would.
Yeah, all right. So, you published your debut novel, The Man on Top of the World, in August of 2016, and it was a GLAAD Bisexual Book Award finalist. So what is this book about?
Well, essentially, it's a love story and a love triangle as well. And I would say more or less it's like my fantasy of what glam rock is and what love between two men can be during that time era, during 1970s. All I'm gonna say. I mean, it's my little baby. I'm so proud. It's my first novel.
Yeah, it holds a special place in your heart, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Cool. So, nothing else you want to give us as far as the characters, or maybe kind of what the characters are dealing with,
Sure.
maybe?
Oh yeah. Well, the main character is Izzy Rich. He's like David Bowie. I mean, every reader has read. They think about David Bowie, of course. And not that I was writing a character based on David Bowie, but there's a lot of influence of David Bowie. It's a little bit of basically all these hyper feminine rock stars I've always like just rocked my world. You know.
Yeah.
And then his lover is his drummer, and they both they're first into just for fun, just fooling around, just having a good time. And then I guess the one part of the story that a lot of readers seem to really like is when Izzy, because he's transgender, he does express himself in a drag character, and through that drag character, the two bond even closer together.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So what pushed you to write this book?
Mm, well, I guess with my love for rock and roll, and I mean, you can tell I'm wearing a Rocky Horror shirt, and all these influences with that do with rock and roll and sex and drugs, and it's about a story that encompasses a lot of what I'm into, what I've always been about, not just with Brian, but in my personal life. I just had to write a story about it.
Okay. So it was kind of a mesh of all of your interests in story form. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. So what has been the general reception to the book? And what are some of the things that readers can connect to in this story?
Oh, I'm glad a lot of people seem to really liked it. They really gravitated towards Izzy, which is funny because because I mean, I thought that people would hate him because he's not meant to be the most likable character hero. So I was very, very impressed that a lot of readers gravitated towards Izzy. They just adore him. And then even with Jonathan, his lover, they said they felt like they were Jonathan. So in a way, it's like they saw themselves as Jonathan, liking Izzy. It's kind of cool. It's like wow. It's like they felt like they were John, and they love Izzy the same way.
Right,
So
right.
yeah, it's really neat, and the way people interpreted it was pretty cool. I was like, wow. I mean, so when anyone since you're by yourself, when people understand your work, you're like, wow, I did something. I did.
Yeah, I know. It must feel great. I mean, I know that it did for me to kind of see people connect with the characters, and just see that you had an impact on somebody else with your work. I know that that's a really special feeling.
Yeah.
Would you say that that's something that would push you to do that some more? I mean, like with another book, possibly.
Yeah. Oh yes.
Okay, all right. So I'm gonna get into that question a little bit later, but let me ask you a little bit more about this book and specifically about reviews, because there were a couple of strongly negative reviews in the blogosphere, where you got knocks because of the gratuitous sex and glorification of drug use. So what would you say to kind of rebut those negative points?
Well, I think context is everything because this book does take place in the 1970s, and it's a time and era. I mean, it's a far gone era now, but when you look back on it through interviews and documentaries from rock stars during that era, that it really was an era of abandon. I mean, there was a sexual revolution. Drugs, like even cocaine, was considered an okay drug. I mean, doctors even approved of cocaine as just a happy drug that you take to just feel good. I mean, it's very bizarre because that's just crazy by today's standards, but back then it was normal. I mean, all the sex and drugs and craziness, it, there wasn't really that many moral values back then. It just kind of it just kind of went all over the place. That was just the era. And
Okay,
with this book, it reflected that. I think it only reflected the era and its time.
I got you. So what do you think? Why do you think some people would go there? I mean, like, because I hear what you're saying. If it was
Mhm.
definitely an era where people were, experiment and do a lot of stuff, but it seemed like some people reacted very negatively to something that seemed like, if they knew that they picked up an erotica for one, and that was set in, that was set in that time period, it seemed like it would be it would be okay for the reviewer. Why do you think maybe a couple of them were surprised by that? I mean, if you have any idea?
I think maybe people when they went into it, they didn't really look me up first. Not that I don't think a reader has to look up the author before reading, but maybe they just went into not really knowing what they were getting themselves into, and I guess they were just shocked and just surprised. But if they had done their research on me a little bit, they would see that I was just being myself. I mean, I'm known for the type of stuff that I write. But I respect my readers, and even the ones that didn't like it or felt strongly, I still have much love and respect for them.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
just wish they could have just done a little bit of the research first, but it happens.
yeah. I mean, of course, with every book, there's going to be some negative reviews out there,
Mhm.
but from what I did see, your readers did definitely back you up with the negative reviews as well. So you do have a lot of dedicated fans out there. Um, so what do you want readers to take away from reading this book?
I want them just to feel that love conquers all. I mean, that sounds so corny. I mean, it really is corny, but love conquers all. And even in this day and age, and we take for granted of how far we've come as LGBT community. Um, and this book kind of is a throwback to the time when a couple, two men could not just go out and hold hands or make out or just be themselves. We take it for granted now, but back then that was the life for many people. And I just hope they go into this book just realizing that we've come a long way.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Sometimes we
great.
still, yeah, so now we still need those stories that go back to the old days. Just to remind us that what, we're lucky now, but
Yeah, it wasn't always
back
good.
then. Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately.
All right. So I'm asking you kind of if you were thinking about doing any new books. So let me ask you, what's next for you?
Well, my second book is written. I'm going through the agent search.
Awesome. Awesome, awesome,
Yeah.
awesome. So you're doing the whole query and getting rejected type thing
Mhm.
all over
The
again now,
form.
right?
Yes. It's
All
been
right.
fun. I mean,
No,
but,
continue.
yeah, I'm very excited about this next book. I don't want to say too much now because I want to make sure that it all falls into place first. But it's written, and I'm very excited for it. It's going to be complete, totally opposite from the rock and roll and sex and drug stuff. It's going to be more like current day, and um, I'm excited, but I'm almost like, I'm still every day I'm going through this process of finding an agent. And you know how it is. Finding an agent, it's tough.
Well, I definitely wish you the best in finding an agent. I'm sure with all of your publications and stuff, I'm sure you'll find someone very soon. And so once that comes out, or if people want to catch up on all of your work, where can they find you? Where can they find all of your work?
Well, mostly, as my fans know, I'm very active on social media, on my Twitter at Foxy Glen Kitty, and on Facebook, which BCLGT author. Those are my main sources, and also my blog. Those where I keep up to date about everything to do with my next book and the last book. And like I said, I love for my fan base to reach out to me, which they do. I mean, I love that people always talk to me every day, send me messages. So people can always find me on Twitter and Facebook.
Good, sounds good. So, Vanessa, I just thank you so much for being on the show tonight. I'm happy that I got to know you through your work, and that we got to have this great conversation. So.
And definitely, thank you.
Of course, of course. And everyone else, please, if you enjoyed the interview, give this a thumbs up, share it. Please give me a subscribe. You'll get notifications when I have something new to come up. And I'm looking forward to kind of making this a lot more regular than it has been. So so just stick with me. It's gonna be great. So thanks for tuning in tonight. I'll catch you next time.